You know, when most of us think about the afterlife, we kind of picture a simple choice. You're either saved or you're damned. But today, we're going to dig into a theological framework from way back in 1832 that just completely shatters that idea. It offers a much more detailed and, well, some would say, a much more merciful map of eternity. Okay, let's get into it.
So, the real question this whole thing tackles is this. When it comes to our eternal destiny, is it really an all-or-nothing game? Are there only two possible endings for all the different kinds of human lives and choices? It seems a bit simple, right?
And this visual right here, this really nails the problem. Just imagine some kind of cosmic scale. If the person who squeaks by with a 50.01% gets eternal bliss, does it really feel just that the person at 49.99%, who is practically identical, gets the complete opposite fate forever? That tiny, tiny difference has troubled people of faith for centuries. Okay, so let's officially call this what it is, the heaven or hell problem. It's a framework that can feel like it's a missing nuance, maybe even fairness. And that exact feeling is what sparked the incredible vision we're about to explore.
And the answer, or at least an answer, came in the form of this incredibly detailed vision. It's recorded as Section 76 in the Doctrine and Covenants, and it presented a picture of the afterlife that was absolutely revolutionary for its time. So, where did this all come from? Well, we have to go back to February 16, 1832. Joseph Smith and his associate Sidney Rigdon are in a small town, Hiram, Ohio, and they're working on a new translation of the Bible. They get to this one verse, John 5:29, which draws this stark line between the resurrection of life and the resurrection of damnation. That stark contrast just didn't sit right with them, so it prompted them to stop and ask God for a clearer understanding. And the vision that followed, well, that became Section 76.
And that question opened the floodgates, leading them right to the core of this vision, a detailed cosmology that basically replaced the simple up or down model with three distinct kingdoms or degrees of glory.
So instead of just, pass or fail, this vision laid out a whole spectrum. It described three main degrees of glory, and each one corresponds to a different level of faith and desire. You have the celestial, the terrestrial, and the telestial.
So at the very top, you've got the celestial kingdom. This is for the people who are all in. They fully embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, they make sacred promises with God, things like baptism, and they do their best to stay faithful to them. This is where God dwells.
Then there's the terrestrial kingdom. You can think of this as a place for good, honorable people who, for whatever reason, just weren't fully committed or valiant in their testimony of Jesus while on earth. It's also for those who might have rejected the gospel in this life, but then had a change of heart and accepted it after death.
And this is where things get really wild for the 1830s. You have the telestial kingdom. Now, this place is for those who are wicked, who rejected the gospel. They are absolutely held accountable for their actions. They suffer for their sins. But, and this is the revolutionary part, they are eventually redeemed and inherit a kingdom of glory too, even if it's a lesser one.
Okay, so to make this super clear, the vision uses this beautiful analogy of the sun, moon, and stars. The celestial glory is like the brightness of the sun. The terrestrial is like the moon, and the telestial is like the stars. But here's the key thing to notice. They all shine. Yeah, they're different in brightness, but they are all sources of light. In this view, almost no one is cast into permanent, absolute darkness.
All right, so this whole structure naturally brings up a huge theological question. How can a system that saves pretty much everybody still satisfy the demands of justice? In other words, how do justice and mercy meet?
And look, it's a totally fair question, right? It's the common objection to any theology that seems a little too generous. If everyone gets some kind of glory in the end, do our choices here and now even matter? Doesn't that just take away the urgency to be a good person?
Well, the key difference here is how this model stacks up against what people might call pure universalism. In this vision, there's absolutely no free pass. Justice is served because there's real accountability for sin. But God's mercy is just so big, so expansive, that it ultimately provides a path to some form of salvation for nearly everyone.
So the term that sometimes gets used for this is qualified universalism. Let's break that down. It teaches that resurrection is universal, and salvation from a permanent traditional hell is also universal. But, and this is the big but, exaltation, that highest state of glory, is not. The final reward is graded, perfectly matched to who each person has become and what they truly desire.
So how exactly is justice served then?
Well, it seems to work in a few ways. First, accountability. Sinners don't just get a slap on the wrist, they have to confront the full weight and sorrow of what they've done. Second, transformation. Getting redeemed isn't like taking an elevator to the top floor. It's a long, hard, transformative climb. And finally, it works on a kind of natural law. People end up gravitating to the kingdom where they just fit, the place whose laws they're most comfortable living.
And that last point is captured so perfectly in this quote. The final judgment isn't about some cosmic spreadsheet, just tallying up your good deeds versus your bad ones. It's a judgment of your character, your desires, your very being, what you have ultimately become.
So now let's pull back the camera a bit and look at the context of when this all happened, because honestly, it's pretty mind-blowing. This was, in so many ways, a revelation that was completely ahead of its time.
Just think about this number for a second. 26. That's how old Joseph Smith was when he received this incredibly complex, incredibly sophisticated vision of the afterlife.
I mean, really think about that. A 26-year-old guy on the American frontier. He had no formal training as a theologian, just a basic education. And yet, he produced this detailed cosmology that didn't just tweak, but totally shattered the standard heaven or hell doctrines of 19th century Christianity. And this wasn't just a small tweak to their theology. It was so radical, so out there, that a lot of people just couldn't handle it. In fact, some of the earliest members of the church actually left over this vision because they thought a God who would save wicked people to any degree of glory was just too generous, too merciful. So at the end of the day, what a framework like this does is it completely shifts your motivation. It helps move you away from being good simply out of a fear of eternal damnation and moves you toward a hope in a God who is both perfectly just and unimaginably merciful. A God whose grand plan is designed to save and lift as many of his children as he possibly can.
Okay, so we've walked through this incredible vision. What does it all reveal? What's the big takeaway here?
You know, the Bible talks about how in my Father's house are many mansions. This vision just blows that idea wide open. And it leaves us with this final question to really chew on. If heaven isn't some one-size-fits-all destination, but this vast, varied, incredible home with a place of glory for almost everyone, what does that reveal about the nature and the character of the one who designed it all?